Oberst Heinrich Eberbach sits on the steps of the burned-out Reichstag, hands bound behind his back, watching Soviet T-34s parade through the ruins of Berlin. He's a prisoner now, captured 3 days ago when his last operational Panther ran out of fuel in the Tiergarten and his crew surrendered, rather than die in a pointless last stand. Around him, thousands of other German prisoners sit in similar postures of defeat, silent, exhausted, hollow-eyed men watching the victors celebrate. The T-34s roll past in seemingly endless columns, T-34 85s mostly, but Eberbach spots older models too, veterans from Kursk and earlier, still functional after years of combat. Their white winter camouflage has been painted over with red stars and victory slogans in Cyrillic. Crews sit on the holes, grinning, smoking, waving Soviet flags. Some have spray-painted kill marks on their turrets, 10, 20, 30 German tanks destroyed. "They won," a voice beside him says in German. Eberbach turns to see Hauptmann Otto Carius, the 88mm gun specialist from the early war. He looks ancient, gray-haired, thin, aged a lifetime in 4 years. But he's alive, which is more than can be said for most of the officers Eberbach knew in 1941. "Yes," Eberbach replied simply. "They won. I killed 42 T-34s personally. 42! I was good at my job. We were all good at our jobs. Best trained tank crews in the world, best optics, best tactics, best maintenance protocols. And we lost anyway." Another T-34 rumbles past, this one towing a captured Tiger II behind it. The irony is almost poetic. The 69-ton German super-heavy tank designed to be invincible, being dragged through Berlin by a 32-ton Soviet medium tank that German generals once dismissed as primitive junk. "Do you remember June 1941? The first time we encountered them?" I ask. "Near Alatus," Carius nods. "I was there, watched our 50mm rounds bounce off like pebbles. I remember thinking it had to be a fluke, some experimental model they couldn't produce in quantity." We were all thinking that, I Ebers. The intelligence reports, the briefings, every assessment from OKH said Soviet industry was backwards, that they couldn't mass-produce sophisticated weapons. We believed we had years of technological superiority. We were wrong. Yes, we were catastrophically, fatally wrong. They fall silent, watching more T-34s pass. Eberbach counts them automatically, a habit from years of combat. 50 tanks in this column alone. And this is just one street in one sector of Berlin. How many thousands of T-34s are in the city? How many tens of thousands across Eastern Europe? A Soviet officer approaches the prisoner group, a senior lieutenant with a chest full of medals. He stops in front of Eberbach, studying the German colonel's insignia and decorations. "You are tanker?" the Soviet asks in broken German. "Yes. Panzer commander since 1939. I also tanker." He taps his own chest. T-34 commander since 1941. "I fight at Kursk, at Kherson, at Vistula, now here. My tank," he points to a passing T-34 85 with the number 1835721 painted on its turret. Same tank since beginning. Rebuilt many times, but same tank. Lucky tank. Eberbach recognizes the type of survivor standing before him, the kind who makes it through years of combat through a combination of skill, caution, and impossible luck. The kind that has killed dozens of German tanks and lived to tell about it. "How many?" Eberbach asks, nodding toward the kill marks on the officer's T-34. 73 German tanks destroyed, 42 Panthers, 18 Panzer IVs, 7 Tigers, 6 Tiger IIs. The Soviets' face is expressionless, reciting statistics the way another man might recite grocery lists. 73 kills. This single Soviet officer has destroyed more German armor than some entire companies, and he's just one crew in one tank among thousands. "Your T-34, Eberbach says carefully. "In 1941, we thought it was crude, poorly made. We laughed at the rough welds, the simple interior, the lack of radios in most models." It was crude, the Soviet agrees without rancor. It was uncomfortable, loud, vision was bad, ergonomics were terrible, but it worked. It was simple enough that factory workers, many of them women and teenagers, could build them quickly. Simple enough that field mechanics could repair them with basic tools. Simple enough that conscripts with minimal training could drive and fight them. He pauses, looking at his tank with something like affection. Your Panthers were better, he continues, better in almost every way, but you couldn't make enough of them. You couldn't repair them in field conditions. You couldn't train enough crews. So your better tanks lost to our adequate tanks. It's the epitaph of the Wehrmacht's Eastern Front campaign, delivered with matter-of-fact clarity by a Soviet tanker in the ruins of Berlin. Quality versus quantity. Sophistication versus simplicity. German excellence versus Soviet pragmatism. And pragmatism won. What happens now? Carius asks. To us. The Soviet shrugs. Prisoner camps. Siberia, probably. Rebuilding what your armies destroyed. You will be worked hard. Many will die, but some will live, will eventually go home. He looks around at the devastated city. If you have homes to return to. He starts to walk away, then pauses and turns back. You want to know the real reason you lost? He asks, not tactics or numbers or terrain? Eberbach nods slowly. You believed your own propaganda. You believed you were superior in technology, in culture, in racial destiny. You believed the Soviet Union was primitive, backward, incapable of matching German engineering. That arrogance, that blindness cost you the war. He gestures at the passing columns of T-34s. We knew we were behind you in 1941. We knew our tanks were crude compared to German precision. So we didn't try to match your sophistication. We made something different. Something good enough, cheap enough, simple enough to build in massive numbers. We adapted to reality. You tried to force reality to adapt to you. He salutes ironically, a gesture that's somehow both respectful and mocking, and walks back to his tank. Eberbach watches him climb into the commander's cupola of the T-34 bearing factory number 1435721, watch the tank rumble away down the Unter den Linden, past the Brandenburg Gate, past the burned-out ministry buildings. He's right, Carius says quietly. We lost this war the moment we started believing our superiority was inevitable. The moment we saw the first T-34 and convinced ourselves it couldn't possibly be mass-produced. The moment we laughed instead of adapting. Eberbach thinks back to June 1941, to standing in General Major von Funk's command tent, arguing that the Wehrmacht needed to immediately redesign its tanks to counter the T-34 threat. He remembers von Funk's response. We are committed. The die is cast. We must win quickly. They didn't win quickly, and the T-34s multiplied while German tank production struggled to replace losses. By 1943, the Soviets were producing more T-34s in a month than Germany produced tanks of all types. By 1945, the numbers were so lopsided that individual tank quality became almost irrelevant. 60,000 T-34s, Eberbach says almost to himself. That's what intelligence estimates for total production. 60,000. We destroyed perhaps 40,000 of them over 4 years, and they still had enough to drive all the way to Berlin. While we built what? 25,000 tanks total across all models? Panthers, Tigers, Panzer IVs, everything combined? Less than half what they built of just one model? The mathematics are brutal in their simplicity. The Wehrmacht killed 2 T-34s for every German tank lost, a ratio that would constitute a decisive victory in any previous war. But in industrial warfare, against an enemy that could replace losses faster than Germany could inflict them, a 2-to-1 kill ratio meant slow, inevitable defeat. More T-34s pass, their crews young and jubilant, celebrating victory in the heart of the enemy capital. Some of the tanks are towing captured German equipment, Panthers, Tigers, assault guns, all the sophisticated weapons that were supposed to turn the tide. All of them now war trophies, monuments to German engineering excellence that proved insufficient. What will you tell your children, Carius asks, when they ask how Germany lost this war? When they ask how the mighty Wehrmacht that conquered Poland and France was beaten by the Soviet Union? Eberbach watches a T-34-85 roll past its 85mm gun, traversing lazily, searching for targets that no longer exist. He thinks about that first encounter in Lithuania, about the rounds bouncing off sloped armor, about the sick realization that everything the Wehrmacht believed about Soviet capabilities was wrong. "I'll tell them," he says slowly, "that we were beaten by a tank we didn't respect, that we laughed at crude welds and simple engineering, that we thought precision mattered more than production capacity, that we believed quality would always triumph over quantity." He pauses, watching the endless parade of Soviet armor, and they'll tell them that the T-34, uncomfortable, crude, unsophisticated, was exactly the weapon the war required. Not the best tank in individual combat, but the best tank.
Not the best tank in individual combat, but the best tank for industrial warfare. The right tank, Karius agrees quietly. Built by the right nation at the right time, while we built masterpieces in insufficient numbers. The sun breaks through the smoke and dust, illuminating the ruins of Berlin in harsh afternoon light. Somewhere in the wreckage of the city, German survivors are beginning the impossible task of rebuilding. Somewhere to the east, Soviet factories are still producing T-34s. Though the war in Europe is effectively over, they'll continue building them for years, eventually exporting them to client states and allies around the world. The T-34 will outlive the war by decades, serving in conflicts from Korea to the Middle East to Africa. It will become the most widely produced and distributed tank in history, a testament to the philosophy that built it. Adequate is good enough. Quantity has a quality all its own. And sometimes crude simplicity triumphs over sophisticated excellence. But all of that is future history. Right now, in May 1945, the T-34 has accomplished its immediate purpose. It has crushed the Panzers that once seemed invincible. It has driven across 2,000 kilometers from Moscow to Berlin. It has avenged 27 million Soviet dead. And the German generals who laughed at it in 1941 are either dead or sitting in the ruins of their capital, prisoners of the army they underestimated. Eberbach stands slowly, his bound hands making balance difficult. A Soviet guard motions for him to sit back down, but Eberbach ignores him, remaining on his feet to watch one more T-34 column pass. He owes them that much. Respect for the weapon that beat him, recognition of the tank that rewrote the rules of armored warfare. "They're not laughing anymore," Karius observes, echoing words from days or years before. "No," Eberbach agrees, watching the T-34s roll past. "No one is laughing anymore." The last T-34 in the column passes, and Berlin falls silent except for the distant rumble of more tanks, more armies, more Soviet forces occupying what remains of the Reich. The war in Europe is over. The T-34 has written the final chapter with fire and steel. And the verdict is clear. Arrogance has a price. Underestimation has consequences. And sometimes the tank you laugh at becomes the tank that crushes you.